Happy Friday! Hashtag my global family. This is Drea Beta, coyote walking in this world, real life, a Salado Pueblo superhero, proud two-spirit indigenous warrior. Welcome to Indigenous Warrior Interviews with Dre, real life, a Salado Pueblo superhero. This is our very first episode. We are here to welcome our very special guest, my amazing peer at New Mexico Humanities Now at the University of New Mexico. We are a transfer initiative family, but she is a badass superhero in the history department, a PhD candidate, and an enrolled citizen of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself, family, but please join me in giving her a warm welcome. Yay!
Oh, thank you. Osio, Rachel Cassidy Dakwadon, Gunli Aliga, Chichi Lugon. What I said is Rachel is what I'm called, and I'm happy. I'm so happy that we're all here together today. So thank you for that. That's the Cherokee language, by the way, if you've never heard it before. I know it's not common in the Southwest, but
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and get started, family. Sorry, forgive this technologically challenged coyote family. Again, you are the very first episode of Indigenous Superhero Interviews with Dre. Don't forget to follow me, family. I am a vlogger with over 29,530 followers as of 2 days ago on 7 social media platforms. This is part of my doctoral dissertation project proving that Indigenous people, queer people, two-spirited people, people with disabilities can still go out and be super. I can have a panic attack in the morning and go present my research at an international conference in the afternoon. Join me, family, in role modeling what's possible. Again, our amazing guest today is Rachel Cassidy, PhD candidate at the University of New Mexico and enrolled citizen of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. She is a superhero, family. Her research interests include Native DC, oral history, indigenous methodologies, and memory studies. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and tell us how you got interested in this work?
oh my gosh, that's when I was a twinkle in my father's eye. Hey, just kidding. No, but I mean, learning about Native history and being around Native communities has always just been part of my everyday life. I am Cherokee from Oklahoma, but I grew up next to the Southern Ute Reservation in Southern Colorado. So I definitely had some confusing ideas about what Indigenous identity was, or my Indigenous identity was, which was just kind of funny. I have these really cute drawings that I did as a kid, and you can just tell that I was around a lot of Native artists. There's like a teepee and buffalo and pottery and like, there it just was like not a Cherokee drawing at all. It was just funny. And like pottery and teepees don't go together either. Anyway, it was just a whole funny like thing. I'm not really sure why I'm telling you about that, but you can edit it out if you want to. So,
Great family, still learning that skill.
let's see. I guess it really started when I was in high school. I went to the Native American Preparatory School, which was in Road, New Mexico, and it was an all Native school that was designed to prepare Native students for college. And it was really small. I think there were about 70 students in the whole school. So I had about, I think, 12 or 13 people in my graduating class. And I remember, just everything we did they did such an amazing job indigenizing the education process and thinking about education and how it could look different in a school setting, like from a Native perspective. For example, every morning, we had what was called a morning meeting. And so the whole community like gets together in this big room and we are in a circle and we take a moment of silence for prayer or appreciation or whatever. And then it's just kind of this equal forum where everybody can make announcements about anything that's going on, and a different student would run the meeting every day of the year. So everybody kind of had their day that you could tell people a little bit more about yourself, and even just the day that you're like in charge of running things. It was a really wonderful way to make all of us feel like we were part of something bigger. And we really all, I think, still feel like we're a family to this day. So they did a really great job with that. But at that school is where I learned these the first time I really heard these horrible statistics about how many Native people have PhDs. And I think at the time, which this was in the 90s, that it's different now. I do have a more updated number, but at the time in the 90s, it was something like of the Native students that graduated from high school, I think it was like 8 to 10% of them would go to college. And of that 8 to 10%, 1 to 3% would graduate. And of that 1 to 3%, 1% would go on to get a graduate PhD degree. So it was like very, very tiny. And so from a really early age, I thought, well, man, I want to bump that number up at least one more, I've got to improve that statistic. So, and then one of my early, one of the places that I worked kind of early in my career was the National Museum of the American Indian at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. And so I was really grateful when I worked there that my high school experience had included so much Indigenous history about Native communities around the Western Hemisphere. And none of it was like deep dissertation type research, but I could offer a general narrative about, Mayan culture and Aztec people. And that was something that a lot of my colleagues people just aren't exposed to that, that degree of Indigenous narratives in general. So being there is really kind of what's led me like all the way down this rabbit hole of the PhD. I will stop talking eventually. But
We are academics. That is an impossibility.
yeah. Yes, I have a 45-minute class. You were all captive.
But going back to your the amazing privilege of being able to attend a school that was college preparatory, but actually was focused on Native culture, Native existence, Native presence, Native community. That must have been such an empowering experience, juxtaposed to this coyote's experience of Catholic school, private Catholic school, both in middle school and then in high school. And again, it's a neo-colonial project, right? I'm from the Pueblo of Isleta. We were colonized conquistadors. We have the Pueblo Revolt. We have our own indigenous superheroes throughout history, but I never read about them in my K-12 experience, non-existent, right? Even with the curriculum, New Mexico does require New Mexico history, but again, indigenous people are often reduced and not actually seen as a living, thriving, growing people, but yet this antidote of the past. These people that we railroaded over, raped, killed, took their land, enslaved them. Oh, but now we're modern times and everything's fixed. I was wondering, how did that experience, right? So I was traumatized in my childhood educational experience, which is why I'm a researcher, activist, and revolutionary now, to use the transformative power of education. How do you think that experience compares to now, right? I don't know about your PhD, your master's, your undergrad experience. I went to Dartmouth College, which is an Ivy League school, specifically for taming, educating the savages of the wilderness by Elijah Wheelock in 1669. And that's what he did. He went around to England and asked the king for a charter and asked rich white people for money to civilize the savages, right? So savage entered me. So how that was a very violent experience. It was very white supremacist, not MKKK, but the ideology that whiteness is right, European history is being superior to our own indigenous histories. How did your experience? Were you also traumatized from going from this very collectivist environment in education to tell me a little bit more about your undergrad and your journey here to UNM?
That's a really good question. I think what's actually traumatized me more than the academy itself was DC. So, because being out there, you really realize how dominant those white male history narratives are, because they're literally
Truth.
monumented around the city. And so I spent, I was frustrated all the time trying to get people interested in Native history and get them to see and understand that there's Native history everywhere. That when we go to the Lincoln Memorial, it's not really a celebration for us. He was responsible for the largest mass hanging in the United States, the Dakota 38. So there's a whole, we see different things when we look at these monuments than other people do. So being in a city that I felt so displaced in was really kind of what led me down the road to the research that I do, which I write about Native Washington, D.C. I'm writing a history of Native residents of D.C. from 1835 through the early 1970s. And the whole point of that is to show that, hey, we've always been a part of this city. We've always been engaging with it and making it our own. DC was never a relocation city. So people chose to relocate there specifically to serve their communities, to protect their sovereignty, and to reset harmful narratives. And so that's something we see consistently throughout all of that DC history. But to go back to your first question about undergrad, I went to Colorado College in Colorado Springs, and it had a very tiny Native student population. And so that was a really interesting experience, going from being in a school that we did have a token white guy at my Native American prep school. But
How did he get in, if I may ask? I wonder.
he paid full tuition.
There is a price. I mean, the United States is bought and sold all the time, family. We are an empire. Remember that. US empire. Wow, token white guy. Okay, so in that would be the ideal situation, right? Is to take white people and immerse them culturally in an environment that is not their own. Do you think that he actually benefited from? Did we get him? Did we create a co-conspirator, as we now say in whiteness studies? It used to be white allies family. Now it's co-conspirator. No. Or it could also go the other way, right? Where it's like neoliberal and they're like, oh, well, I went to an Indian school, so therefore I am the expert. Did it kind of go in that direction? That could
I
also
think that,
be
like,
fair.
to me, this is the kind of person that is just, I don't have frat boys in high school, but he just was frat boy mentality all the way.
Oh, wow.
And the other reason he was at our school is because he'd been kicked out of like 5 other prep schools. So I don't really think he cared where he was, quite frankly.
Can I just like point that out real quick? So like this is like our wonderful like miracle school, but yet it's the dumping grounds for the white boys delinquents. Like I mean, I feel offended by that, right? Like this is so not happy about that. But I mean like anyways, thank you for sharing that. But I'm just saying, right? He could buy his way in. He had no other choices. And instead of being this wonderful experience, it's like his last chance, which feels to me like a dehumanization of one of our great institutions. We are not your babysitters, white people. I'm just saying.
Well, it was definitely funny because it meant so much to the students that were there, the Native students. And it just, to him, it was just another institution.
It meant so much that they had a white guy there.
No,
Oh, you
it
meant
meant
school.
it meant so much that they had a school that they could go to, and it meant so much that they had like one. I remember one student like telling us that he'd never had his own bed before. It was the first time he'd ever had his own room or his own bed, and it was, just. The school was actually built on an old executive resort. So the value that you're getting about yourself as a person and as a human being because you're living in this executive resort is really such an interesting like comparison to like going home to the res, where like you may or may not have electricity and you may or may not have to haul your water home, and here we go back to school and we've got like heated water brick floors. It was so strange, but it was but yeah, like I said, just the value that it really instilled in you, like as a student and as a Native person, like, you know, that like this is what they think you're worth, right? You deserve to be in this space. You deserve to have these opportunities because you're that important. So like for us, it was a miracle school, you know, it was what a boarding school always should have been, you know. Um, but yeah, not everybody, it's not for everybody though. So
Oh no, I mean, and that definitely makes sense. So I don't know about you, but when I do community work, especially with Native American studies or indigenous methodologies, I always come up to the barrier of, well, culture should be totally, that's where I am. I am, just so you guys know, culture should be immersed in every lesson and every day and every interaction in our classrooms. But some people in our communities, due to colonization during the boarding school era, um, were beaten. I am a survivor of rape and molestation as a child due to Indian boarding schools. Every female person in my family has been marked by sexual or physical violence. And that is a direct ramification of Indian boarding schools. So for some people, this idea of an educational institution and Indian identity or indigenous identity are very separate because it was a threat because of their experiences. I'm just wondering, so in my experience, not to be binary, but sometimes there are well, I guess the span of educators would be very traditional Native people ceremony, language, very untraditional, maybe products of boarding schools themselves who have aligned more easily with whiteness because for them it was also a chance at a better life, right? The more we align with whiteness within the US empire and colonization, the better our lives are, the less racism, quote unquote, the more education, the more aligned to empire we are.
Mhm.
How were the educators at that institution? Did they have a mix of traditional people and new educators? Like, what did that look like? Like, I'm trying to again, in an idealization of what the miracle school looks like,
Mhm.
what was the foundation of the people who were driving the ship, so to speak? What was their background? What was their thought of how this was working together?
One thing that I thought was really cool, and I'm not sure if the school continued this the whole time, but I know at least for the first 3 years, all of their professors had advanced degrees because they just wanted us to be taught by people that had a really that not only had gone through those higher academic experiences to normalize it, but also to start teaching us those things that we're going to be learning in college. So I remember we had this little she was actually the first year I was there. She wasn't my English teacher. She was the English teacher for the class ahead of me. But she was this adorable little Zuni lady. she she has a master's degree and she was just all about it. You know, she was like telling him how it was, telling him how it is, and like uh they're getting to read native literature and like analyze native literature and tell these different kinds of stories. In my history class, I had a US history class. My professor was he got his PhD from Berkeley. He worked under Gerald Visner, so there's that, and I didn't even realize what that was when I was in high school. But anyway, he's Creek Cherokee and African American. And the very first day he walked into class and he drew a line down the middle of the board and it said us and them. And he's like, okay, we're going to go through the US narrative and we're going to talk about what they say. And then we're going to talk about what we say. And that's the way it's going to be through the whole class. And it was just like,
Love
you
it.
know,
I love it. I love it. Using your own history, using your perspective, like talking about what's real, right? And how often we don't get that very often, is what I want to say, right? How often do we go into a classroom and the teacher, because of testing, because of pressure, because of standardization, and because of their levelhood, and teachers are always under the threat. I'm telling you, family, please be kind and sympathetic to every teacher you know. They are miracle workers. I'm just saying. But
Mhm.
many times you go into those classrooms and they're teaching by the book, right? There's no other perspective allowed because it's scary, right? It's let's be honest, family, the US public education system is creating US citizens. It's not creating critical thinkers, it's not creating people who are proud of their own heritage. Whiteness is destructive not only to marginalized identities, people of color, but it's also destructive to white people. It strips you of your own identity, your own culture, your own language, and your own histories without you ever knowing it because you're trading it all in for this idea of what a US citizen is. And let's be clear, especially during the Trump era, family, that meant white American. So let's rethink what is possible and redefine what education can be like. So thank you so much to all those amazing professors who transformed Rachel Cassidy into the PhD, soon to be Dr. Cassidy, because we need more superheroes like you. Absolutely. Let's go talk a little bit about so family. As you can tell, both Rachel and I have lightness privilege. We are both she's an enrolled citizen of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. I am a enrolled tribal member of the Pueblo of Isleta, but we both look very white. And that has to do with colonization, family. This was not, it wasn't an accident, right? It had to do with rape. It had to do with conquest. It had to do with two waves of colonization that New Mexico went through with the conquistadors first, and then with U.S. Empire. So how has it been? Not only, but I mean, like your whole life. I know that's the first thing I tell people is I'm indigenous. I'm an indigenous superhero. And don't you make a mistake because I am not a white person. And I talk about weaponizing the privileges of class, of race, of education. Tell me a little bit more about your experience. How do you feel about this lightness privilege that is, again, not of our own making, but, how do you feel, sis?
Oh, that's such a good question. Especially working at the Smithsonian in DC, where we got, I think it was like 4 million visitors a year or something like that. And so it was just, my identity was questioned constantly by everyone. And fortunately, something else I'm actually really, really grateful for from my high school experience was I did have some students that were very mean to me because I am white presenting and would tease me and call me names and like call my room and hang up on me. And it was a little traumatizing for like 14-year-old Rachel, but it did it helped me understand a very small piece of what it feels like for them in every other situation. And so that's why I'm really grateful for it. But I do have, I mean, like you, I have to always, especially when I'm around Native people, hi, I'm Rachel Cassidy, Cherokee, Oklahoma. You have to tell people that I have to volunteer it right away. And not only volunteering it, also because I'm Cherokee, I love my nation. However, we are teased by everybody because they think that, everyone that doesn't know their tribe says they're Cherokee. But
Or at least that's the impression, right? And
right.
again, there was a lot of jumping on the rolls for all indigenous tribes, depending on the time period, because of the benefits of enrollment, right? So back again, family history. Going back to history, colonial times, family. If the Native Americans during the Dawes Act, when they were chopping up all of our indigenous sacred lands and creating white Americans who were going to be farmers, even if we were hunters, gatherers, or nomads or whatever, they didn't care. The US government was like, this is the Indian policy. We're going to make you all American. We'll give you a plot of land. Well, guess what? Many white people would claim to be Indian to get their plot of land. In places like California, they would marry the indigenous women for their land and also kill them. This is a dark part of our history. But I mean, that also has to do with, again, when you are conquered by another people, you will intermarry with them because you are conquered with another people. There was rape that happened, and then marriage might happen later. So let's be honest, again, going back to colonization, family, we are in all shades and colors. But yes, and there is the co-opting of whiteness. Shout out Deloria's book, Playing Indian Family. Please check it out. It's a wonderful read. If I took a second, I could go grab it. But there is a fetishization of indigenous identity, not only here in the United States, but throughout the world. And there is a co-opting of identity. because Americans are stripped of their own identity and their culture, some will say and claim Cherokee status, even though they're not. Or they have a grandmother, right? If we had a dollar for every Cherokee princess we've heard of. But this is real. This is something that is affecting our literal community's identity because white people want to be native. It makes it more difficult for the people who are native to protect their own identities. So I'm just saying, family, be careful, please.
Yeah. So yes, I feel like I kind of have like extra stuff to prove when I am introducing myself, because not only am I white presenting, but also because I'm Cherokee, I have to kind of double prove that yes, I am Native. Yes, I know what I'm talking about. Yes, I'm connected to my family and my community. I know Native history. I know my culture. So you have to do all of that with like kind of skillfully and playfully in like one or two sentences when you're meeting people. So it's really kind of challenging, but we figure it out because, you know, it's a life skill at this point, you know, so it's cool. But I remember when I worked at the Smithsonian, you know, they were always surprised when I told them I was Native. And I'm trying to decide which story I want to tell you. If I want to tell you about them as kindergartners or me as a kindergartner.
We are storytellers, family. That's exactly.
So
both stories. I go with both.
So when I was in kindergarten, my I remember I went to school, and I'm proud of being Cherokee, and I told my friends that I was Cherokee, and they looked at me funny and they said, well, you don't look Cherokee. And I got my little feelings so hurt, and I went home and I was like, Mom, you told me I don't look Cherokee. And she said, well, what's a Cherokee supposed to look like? And I was like, yeah, that's right. I am what a Cherokee is supposed to look like. So that kind of became my story that I shared with a lot of people when I worked at the museum, when they were like, oh, are you full blood? Because it's such a strange question. You know, there's nobody else. Like if you meet someone in France or any other like culture or nation, you're not like, are you full blood? I hope I'm full of blood. If I'm not full of blood, you know, I've got some bigger concerns in my life.
There's a leak somewhere. I've always wanted blue. You know, like what is that? Oh, what movie did they have blue blood? I can't remember. Some alien flick.
Yeah, some alien movie. Maybe Alien.
What was the other story?
So the other thing that was fun, I worked with a lot of school groups. And because, again, I don't look like what they expect a Native person to look like, I would always start my tours by saying, you know, hi, my name's Rachel. I'm from the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma. Are Native people still alive today? And I'm like, okay, everybody got their listening ears on. Sometimes it would take 2, 3, 4, or even 5 times before somebody would realize that I was telling them that sometimes I had to even be like, I'm Cherokee from Oklahoma, which is a Native American tribe.
And
they,
Americans exist.
Yeah, no, it was so funny. It just blew their little minds. So I hope that nobody failed their 3rd grade quizzes because of me, because, you know, they would ask, oh, what do Native people eat? And I'm like, well, there's past tense and there's present tense, right? So I eat Chinese food. Like, that's probably not what they were looking for on the 3rd grade test, but, you know, if they put it in the present tense, that's their fault. I can't.
Person getting their PhD from the College of Education. I am so sad and disappointed with their education system. I mean, like, think about that. That's true. That is on someone's 3rd grade test. Sorry, I'm shouting, family. I'm working on moderating my voice for the audio podcasting thing. You have to have good audio. But God, that's the worst. Because, okay, so also story. Those are kids. They have excuses, right? They watch a lot of TV, a lot of the stuff they believe they, you know, got on the tube. But we went to Dartmouth College, and the smartest people in the nation who got into an Ivy League school without the help of being a Native American were like, you still exist? Do you live in a teepee? Oh my God, I thought you were all dead. From the smartest adult adult leaders in Ivy League Dartmouth, they were just as ignorant as the 3rd graders. So I'm just saying, we have so much work to do because they do. They think we're dead. Like,
Mhm.
again, it goes back to that point. I always use my sociology classes. You guys, this is US empire. We are still a majority white country. It's like 70% white, and like add everyone else together, racial minorities, and you might come up to 30%, including Hispanics and blacks and Asian Americans and the whole gamut. All of us combined, all of us are still a smaller portion, 30% to 70% whiteness. So if you are in a multicultural area like New Mexico, you might think, oh, this is how the rest of the United States is. No, go to Ohio, go to Indiana, go to Iowa. There are so many white people. There are places in the United States, literal states, entire areas that I will not go to because of the violence. So I'm saying, family, we're not dead. Indigenous people are all around you. Just because your K-12 school system did not cover us as being alive and well in this day, please go educate yourself. Go to a community, do some research because honestly, I'm tired of being dehumanized. And my partner and the love of my life and I are going to have kids in 2 years. And I would like for them to live in a future United States of America that was a little less racist and a little bit more educated. I love y'all, bottom of my heart. But seriously, we got to change this. All right, sis, let's go to your first amazing research topic. Tell us more about Native DC.
Oh, well, that's a big question. It's my dissertation topic, so I'm writing about a history of Native residents of Washington, D.C. from 1835 through the early 1970s. And really, there is some that extends beyond that time period because, of course, you have to talk about the local Native communities from the DC area and how they get displaced and what happens to them and how they still maintain those cultural connections living around the city, but they're erased by these local narratives and by state narratives. So it's really interesting because the local state recognized tribes or unrecognized tribes have a completely different relationship with Washington, D.C. than federally recognized tribes. So like I mentioned earlier, people from federally recognized tribes go to Washington, D.C. because it's that seat of American power. That's where they're going to be able to get the most done as far as being able to protect their sovereignty, reset harmful narratives, and provide services that are needed for their communities. Now, for the local Native communities, it's different. One of the women that I talked to, who's Powhatan, from the Pamunkey Reservation in Virginia, which is, interestingly enough, that reservation is actually 100 years older than this country. It's kind of mind-blowing. So their reservation goes back to the Crown of England, and then the colony of Virginia continues to follow through with it. So it's a really, they have an interesting background. But a lot of these local Native communities are mixed with Native, African American, and white. And so the eugenics, especially in this area, did some real damage to the ability for these local recognized tribes to even apply for federal recognition at this point. So in the 1920s, there was a man named Walter Plecker who designed the first census in Virginia, and there were only two boxes. You could check white or colored. And so Native people, whichever one you checked, it doesn't prove that you're Indigenous. It doesn't show that you've had that. One of the requirements to apply to be a federally recognized tribe today is you have to have a paper trail that's unbroken that goes back basically through the whole length of the country. And this tribe has it, but it's a really funny situation. But anyway, like I said, Plecker. So a lot of people don't know that when we talk about eugenics, I think most of the time we think about Nazi Germany, World War II, and all of these, they had these little hair kits where they would hold hair samples up to you to see what your culture was or what your history was based on the color of your hair or the size of your nose or the size of your head. And all of that stuff comes from United States, a lot of the way that they were dealing with Native people. So Plecker, the two tests that he made up for Native people in Virginia were the paper bag test and the pencil test. So the paper bag literally takes a paper bag and holds it up to your skin. And according to how closely your skin color matches that paper bag, that determines your blood quantum. The pencil test is just as bad. It takes a pencil and sticks it in your hair. If the pencil falls out, you have more native blood. If the pencil sticks, you have more African blood. So you have,
Wow, this is the first time I've heard of the paper bag test, but I've never heard of the pencil test.
Mhm.
And again, a different wave of colonization. I mean, it wasn't a colonization as the United States didn't colonize Africa, but again, legacies from the English Empire. But
Mhm.
again, it goes back to discrimination against Blackness. Um, we have an anti-Black history. Okay, seriously, family, we have to deal with our U.S. history of racism because it's clouding everything we're doing today. Thank you so much for sharing those examples, though. I was just thinking about the attacks on the ones we've been seeing so far since the Trump administration. Okay, fine. Go back further. Bush, maybe. We've been seeing a rollback with civil rights protections. The 1980s, the Voting Rights Act of 1980, for example, because they said the United States had fixed racism, so we didn't have to protect voting rights anymore. In addition to that, we've also seen attacks on the Indian Child Welfare Act, where they literally have a law, family, to protect Indian children from being removed from our homes and sent to other communities because historically that happened, right? They kidnapped our children. They're continuing to do it, but now they're doing it legally using the social work system, the social welfare systems we have meant to put in protection. So we are losing those cases. What is as right the 1% of Indian country, aka the people who are going to have PhDs, who are hopefully going to be able to pay our bills someday, right? Um, how are you seeing this as an attack on our entire community, and what do you think our hope is? Is it through more education? Is it through activism? Because sovereignty is being chipped away, right?
Mhm.
It was always, as a child, we thought, oh, the federal government's going to keep its promises. That was a blind hope, right? Like, please keep your promises, giant empire that has your boot on our neck. But now, as an educated person, I don't have that blind faith anymore. So what do you think the solutions are, sis? What do you think we should do moving forward?
Well, I really think the only approach is an indigenous approach. We've always worked in Native communities, and it's not really good to generalize, but I think that this is okay to generalize. It's always been about community conversation, bigger conversations. Everybody brings something different to the table. Some people, yes, they need to be in the courtroom. They should be judges. They should be lawyers. Some people should be activists and be out there riling people up and getting people moving and getting the blood moving and drawing attention to this stuff. Some people need to be journalists. Some people need to be filmmakers. Like, we all are born with these gifts that we're supposed to have to provide those services and protect our community. So I think it's all of us. I think it's the indigenous approach, man. We got to do it all, but not everyone individually, though. We all just have to do our own part. So,
I like that. I like that. All right, sis. Can you tell us a little bit more about your other research interests, oral histories, indigenous methodologies? And I honestly have never heard of memory studies. Can you give our audience a little bit more information on the things that you specialize in?
yes, I would love to. So, when I was an undergrad, I have a minor in film. And so I started doing documentary film work from an early age. And I went and did a lot of oral history work with Native elders, Cherokee elders specifically. And I think I interviewed about 40 elders for my final thesis project in undergrad. So that was just, it really showed me the need to, the anthropologists always go out and ask questions, but we ask different questions. The information that we get is different. The stories that we get from our community and family members are different. And it really showed me that there's something really intimate and personal about those stories that are now being, at least, I hate the word preserved in oral history because it makes it sound like we're, you know, I don't know, makes it sound like we're a raspberry jam or something. Like it needs to stay good all winter, but it's fine. Like I hate this idea of like preserve. I don't know. The idea,
It reminded me of, for a second, like the idea we're disappearing,
yeah,
right? Oh, we got to save it before we vanish. And that, let's be honest, family, that was their hope. They hoped to take over the giant continent. They couldn't kill us. They tried to convert us. But yeah, no, I hear you. I didn't like that language either. The idea, we are always here, family.
that's right. So yeah, so documentary work has always been something that I've done, and oral history work has always been something that I've done. It's kind of funny because it doesn't really matter to me what name you put on it. Podcasting is sort of a similar idea to me. Like you can have a picture or not have a picture, but it's just the idea of us collecting these stories from each other and making them accessible to our community. And so that's really something that I'd like to do when I get done with this PhD, is actually start a company where I can go to different Native communities and spend a couple of weeks teaching kids how to make short films and how to do oral histories and have them go out and interview their elders. And I don't need to know what they interview people about. They can talk about anything they want. It stays there in their community. They add to their own archive. And then at the end of the workshop, we'd put together a little 5-minute celebrations about each elder that they interviewed, and we could have a community premiere where everyone comes out and gets to celebrate the grandparents as movie stars and these really cool films that the kids have made, and they're learning how to tell their stories. They're getting to spend time with elders and they're adding to their communities. So that's like, for me, that all kind of started with my documentary undergrad stuff, and it definitely still carries through to what I want to do today with my dissertation and my research. And actually part of that is memory studies. So, oral history is so funny. When I did my undergraduate, I told you I interviewed these 40 elders, but at that time oral history wasn't considered to be a credible source because it wasn't written down. So I just wrote it down and then cited it. So,
I love it. I love it. There's always a workaround.
yeah, it's like, oh, okay, well, I'll write it down then. Fine. But it's, yeah, no, it's funny. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Memory studies. So memory studies really kind of started, most of the time we hear about it in reference to World War II. And it's a study of how different societies remember and how they create societal memory. So it looks at museums, it looks at monuments, it looks at commemoration days, it looks at oral histories, it looks at cemeteries. There's a lot of different ways that we express history and record history on the landscape so that it becomes this normal, unquestioned part of our everyday life. And so kind of understanding how memory studies works is so useful for me as a Native person, because I feel like for us, man, that's what we've always done is memory studies, right? I mean, those oral histories, those get passed down like exactly word for word, generation after generation. Landscape of memory, you can look around and there's a story about this mountain, there's a story about this particular place or this rock. And like, it's, yeah, man, I'm sorry. We've got an edge on memory studies. They need to watch out. Native people are coming for you. So.
I love it. I love it. Taking over academia, one interaction.
Yeah.
Oh
So
my
I don't
God.
know. Did that help? Did that explain memory studies?
Yes,
Kind
no, absolutely. Thank you so much, Rachel, for spending a quality time with this coyote and sharing your work, your passions with our amazing global family. My last question for you are, what are your future plots for world domination?
of.
Which is what this coyote's always working on.
Yeah, no, great question. I think that kind of like I said before, it's for me, it's about teaching the next generation how to pick up where we're going or wherever they want to go. It's all for them. So whatever it is that they need, like that's where I want to be. That's who I want to be helping. And if I can start my Native film company, that would be great. If I am out teaching in Native communities, that would be great. If I'm doing like, creating curriculum, that would be great. It doesn't really matter to me how I go about it. I just know that they're the most important thing. And so I've got to figure out how to use my gifts to help them, because I'm just here till they get to be my age, right? I'm just holding their place. So
I love it. Thank you so much. Dear family, you have been watching Indigenous Warrior Interviews with Dre, real life Asleta Pueblo superhero. Our amazing guest was soon to be Dr. Rachel Cassidy, currently a PhD candidate at the University of New Mexico in the History Department. Also, this coyote's peer and colleague as a fellow GA at the New Mexico Humanities Now initiative. If you would like to learn more about soon to be Dr. Rachel Cassidy's work, don't forget to contact her. Again, her areas of specialties are studying Native DC, including the Indigenous superheroes who had lived there and gone there to advocate on behalf of our communities, oral history, Indigenous methodologies, memory stories, and film studies. This is her contact information, family. It is CassidyR@unm.edu. Don't forget to follow her and like her on social media. For Instagram, it is Salagi.
Jalagi.
One more time, sis.
Jalagi. It's
Jalagi.
Jalagi.
Jalagi underscore PhD underscore almost.
And that's spelled TSALAGI, which is the Cherokee pronunciation for Cherokee. That's anyway. That's all.
I love it. I love it. Don't forget to follow us, family. Like, share, comment, and of course, think of sponsoring us, not only on Patreon, family. I'm still working on that. But you can also email me at nitacoyote@gmail.com for further information. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Drea Beta, hashtag Coyote Walking in this world, real life Asleta Pueblo superhero. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Clubhouse. Give me a second, family, and I'll be on Patreon by next month. So working on those plans for world domination, sis. But I love your ideas. Film study, teaching in Native communities, passing on all of our knowledge to the future generations. I think that is definitely, it's going to happen, sis. Again, thank you so much to my amazing colleague and peer. You made my day. I can't wait to hang out later. Do you want to go ahead and give a promo for tonight's event?
Sure. So tonight we are reviving the long running, let's see. I think I got the actual, I made up a different name for it, but I got the actual name for it. Hold on one second. The History Anti-Hegemonic Association. So we have a fake conference in the history department where all of the graduate students can get together and just poke fun at ourselves and poke fun at our profession. So people are putting together fake presentations. Probably there's going to be some impressions of faculty in the department, I imagine. We have prizes, I have awards. I'm really excited. I went to the dollar store and found all the shiny things. So I think it's going to be a good time. So we're bringing back our fake conference. I even got name tags. Oh, so nerdy.
I love it. I love it. It's going to be happening. So DM us, family, if you'd like more information. I can't wait. It's going to be academic sparring with a little bit of fun and maybe some alcohol. Love you all. Have a great weekend. Don't forget to stay safe and spend quality time with those you love.